Welcome to my channel on the best of fantasy. Today I will be reviewing Guards. This is the first of the Night Watchmen book in the Discworld series by Sir Terry Pratchett. This review will be free of major spoilers. I'll be discussing the characters a wee bit, but not giving anything away in the process. And also, I want to keep this not just spoiler free, but I'm going to do my very best to not reveal how I feel about the book, because I will be discussing it with Alan from the Library of Alexandria, and I want to keep it a bit of a surprise. So I will keep this review text focused. I will try to be as objective as possible and not give away my true feelings about my reading experience until I talk with Alan on his channel at some point later in this month, which I'm very much looking forward to. So, a brief synopsis of the plot, which you would find on the back cover, more or less. There is a crisis coinciding with the disappearance of a book called The Summoning of Dragons. Disappears from the Unseen University, and a long extinct dragon appears in Ankh-Morpork only to become king. And it appears that it's up to the much ridiculed men of the Night Watch to save the day, led by none other than Captain Vimes. Now, Captain Vimes is the protagonist of the story, you could say, and he is, in my opinion, the ultimate everyman. He is a character with whom I think it's fairly easy, at least it was for me, to identify, but he is also a bit down and out. He has seen better times. When we first meet him, it is clear that he has suffered some major disappointments in life, and feeling a bit bad too about the place of the Night Watch in the city of Ankh-Morpork as well, because they are, as I said before, much ridiculed, and basically their function is to, well, not function. So this is something that seems to be eating away at Captain Vimes. But he is followed by his intrepid followers, the rank, as they're called. There is Sergeant Colin, who is a quintessential kind of comical sergeant. It was one of my favorites. One of my favorite scenes, anyway, in the book is with Sergeant Colin and his bow. It's a really great scene. If you can't tell already, there's some wonderful comedy in here. And there's also, along with Sergeant Colin, there is, of course, our good Corporal Nobbs, who is a person, well, possibly a person, a human. It's a bit difficult to tell, but he is certainly a very colorful character as well. And these fellows all come from the kind of a working class background. So as I'll mention in a little bit, there is a bit of a class theme going on in here as well. And that's fairly central to what I think Pratchett is doing here in Guards. So, and then they are joined a little bit later by a character named Carrot, who is briefly a dwarf, or at least he thinks he is. He was raised by dwarves, but he actually is well over 6 feet tall. So he's a character who introduces a certain idealism to the Night Watch. Maybe a good dose of idealism is what they needed, but... So, those are the Night Watchmen, and you also have some other wonderful characters in here, such as Lady Sybil Ramkin, who is an aristocrat in Ankh-Morpork from the old blood, as it were, and a wonderful foil in some ways to Samuel Vimes, and the dynamics between them are really quite fun to watch. And you have Errol, the swamp dragon. Now, swamp dragons are little dragons, not the big ones. They are distant cousins of a sort to the big ones. And Errol is he's maybe, well, he is not your typical dragon, let's put it that way. He fits along with a lot of the comedy of Discworld. So Errol is a wonderful touch. And you have the librarian, who in previous books had been transformed into an orangutan and is functioning apparently quite well as a librarian in the state of an orangutan, and is a character who is very eloquent, although he is restricted to saying things like ook. But those are very profound statements oftentimes in terms of the state of humanity and everything else. The only thing is be very careful about saying the word monkey in his presence, because he's not a monkey, he's an ape. So, yeah, there's also the patrician, the person in charge of the city in the beginning, Lord Vetinari, who is quite Machiavellian in many ways, and his able assistant Lupine Wones. And also, notably, you have the secret society who in their robes and everything else with their secret passwords and so on and so forth. The elucidated brethren of the Ebon Knight. And they play a very crucial role in the plot as well. And there's some really wonderful comedy that is associated with them. Speaking of which, comedy, the humor in here, I'm pretty sure almost everybody who reviews a Terry Pratchett book in Discworld will mention Monty Python. For me anyway, I kept thinking of Monty Python as I was reading Guards. So it just seems like that sort of humor, very British, of course. And there are even some phrases in there that I had to look up, even though I'm kind of an Anglophile. I had to look up a few phrases here and there, just very British ones. Like the one about your Uncle Bob. Yeah, that one that came up quite a few times. Yeah, the humor is just, it's quite pervasive. So if you enjoy comedy, particularly that brand of comedy, then Discworld will certainly be for you. But just about every page, there are jokes, and there's a lot of wordplay, and quite a bit of double meanings and that sort of things with expressions such as "throw the book at him," which of course is not to be taken literally, unless you're a certain character. Or practicing human sacrifice, meaning you got better at it because, well, you practiced it. There's a lot of this sort of humor, but there's also a lot of humor that depends on a kind of, I would say, a semi-literate working class, because a lot of the wordplay, a lot of the word humor is associated with these working class characters misusing or mispronouncing certain words, often French ones. Knobs or knobby is especially notable for this. And this mangling of expressions often leads to some fairly comical statements. But yeah, in terms of themes, class is there. It is a big part of Guards. And in a way, I see Ankh-Morpork as a fantasy version of a cosmopolitan city like London. It's kind of gritty and greasy, and it's full of quirky people and full of the bizarre. And it's mostly, though, a massive entity, a collective entity that subsumes the will of individuals in certain ways. And this is important thematically. So individuals, the citizens of Ankh-Morpork certainly have some pluck. You have to admire them at times for their pluck. But they are not anywhere near heroic. Heroic would not be the word you would want to associate with the citizens of Ankh-Morpork. They are more mercantile, I suppose. Practical, maybe a nice way of putting it. But there are personalities among them, to be sure. There are people like Cut Me Own Throat Dibbler, the hawker who's always trying to sell his wares at cutthroat prices. But the fact is, when these personalities are faced with a vast threat, something like, say, a dragon, then they tend to be a lot like sheep, and perhaps even fundamentally selfish and cowardly. And there's a kind of a statement about humanity here, perhaps. There's a sense of helplessness, I think, that we can all identify in the face of larger forces. And we have a tendency at those times of crisis to jump on the bandwagon, do the easiest thing. So this leads to a kind of a big theme that I want to sort of articulate by reading this quote from late in the book. And I'm not going to reveal who is speaking because I want to avoid spoilers, but the person is speaking to the intrepid Captain Vimes. And here's what the person has to say to our protagonist. I believe you find life such a problem because you think there are the good people and the bad people. You're wrong, of course. There are always and only the bad people. But some of them are on opposite sides. A great rolling sea of evil. Shallower in some places, of course, but deeper, oh, so much deeper in others. But people like you put together little rafts of rules and vaguely good intentions and say, this is the opposite. This will triumph in the end. Amazing. He slapped Vimes good-naturedly on the back. So that's probably enough. I think you get the idea there. And poor Vimes doesn't have the eloquence to answer this. But I think it's fair to say that even though he may have no argument in words, it's with his deeds that he makes his statement. His refusal to give up. His refusal to lie down and throw in the towel. This is, I think, at the heart of Guards. And it is, in a sense, I think this is the everyday courage of the everyman. And this is what, for me, Guards was about. That everyday courage of the everyman, getting up in the morning and facing the day, that whether the terrors are vast or simply, the quotidian ones, it may not seem like a lot. It may not seem terribly heroic or courageous. But in the end, it might just be one of the things that defines us most as humans. And that's it for me. Until next time.